from each candidate in the same order that they will speak now. So, well, we're about to find out from our 5 candidates what they have to say, and in only a few weeks, one of them will be leader of the Conservative Party and Prime Minister, and our purpose today, of course, is to find out which one, if any. So I'm going to go over to Liz Truss, who will make the first opening statement. Liz, welcome.
Thanks very much, Paul, and great to see everybody today. I wasn't brought up as a traditional Conservative. I grew up in Paisley. I went to school, comprehensive school in Leeds. And what I saw at that school is I saw lots of children being let down by low educational standards, by a lack of expectation, and also by a lack of opportunity. And I just thought that was an incredible waste. So one of the reasons I want to go into this job and why I went into politics is I want this country to be somewhere where everyone can succeed, regardless of where they're from. I want us to be an aspiration nation that unleashes opportunity right across this country. But the reality is we've had 2 decades of low growth. We haven't seen those opportunities, and we're now facing a major economic crisis following COVID and the war of Russia in Ukraine. And this is why we need a bold economic policy. We can't just go on with our current policy. I advocate a major new economic plan. We need to cut taxes, particularly things like national insurance and corporation tax. We need to get people to invest in the United Kingdom. We need to see public spending held under control for the future. But we also need to unleash the dynamism of the British economy by reforming our regulations, by truly diverging from EU regulations, whether it's Solvency II, whether it's MiFID. We need to open up opportunities right across Britain. I would set up investment zones, low tax zones around the country to help level up in a Conservative way. I want to see farmers able to produce food without unnecessary regulation. And what I want to do is make sure that we are truly leveling up our country. I'm somebody who can go into the job on day one. I've got a track record of delivering, whether it's the Department of Trade, where we secured dozens of trade deals, even though people said it wouldn't be possible, whether at the Foreign Office, where I've stood up to Vladimir Putin. We put in some of the toughest sanctions of anywhere in the world. And we've also dealt with the issue of the Northern Ireland Protocol, resolving a long-standing issue. What's important is that we deliver on the promises we made to the British people. People across the country are struggling with the cost of living. They need to know that things are going to be different. And I'm the Prime Minister who, together with a really strong Conservative team, can deliver on the ground from day one and make that difference. It's not inevitable that Keir Starmer or Ed Davey are going to win the next election. In fact, I don't think they're very popular at all. But what we have to do is show momentum, to show we can do things differently, to show we can deliver on the promise of Brexit and really open up these opportunities. And that's what I would deliver as Prime Minister. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. And without any more ado, I'm going over to Tom Tugendhat.
Good morning. We're Conservatives because we believe in Britain. This is the country that we love. This is the country that we serve. But in recent days, in recent months, we've seen trust collapse from the Conservative Party and from the government. We need to change. We need a clean start. We need a new way of approaching the country that we govern and the party that we all serve. Because this isn't about us. It's not about us here today. It's about you. It's about the communities that you lead as activists, as councillors, as many other different walks of life. It's about how you deliver a different Britain. Now, I believe in Britain. I fought for Britain, and I'm incredibly proud of our great country. So I'm looking forward to making the case this evening, today, and for many years to come. Because what we need to do is not be just choosing the leader of the Conservative Party, however important that is, but the leader of our country, who is going to take Labour to task on their epic failures around the country, to take on the SNP, who are trying to tear us apart, to take on Plaid and the Lib Dems, who are letting down communities across the UK. But we can only do it. We can only do it if we get a clean start. We can only do it if we restore trust in our government, trust in our party, trust in every part of the United Kingdom, because this party is the natural party of government, because we deliver. We deliver for the British people. We deliver the change that people need. And we know that we need to plan for the future, because at the moment, the crises at home, the cost of living, the challenges abroad that I've called out on so many occasions, Russia and China that I've been warning about for years, are now coming home. They're coming home to roost and they're costing us all. And if you want to know why your fuel bills are high, if you want to know why trust is collapsing, look at the failures that we've had and the changes that we need. Because as Conservatives, we have never been better than when we're dynamic. Margaret Thatcher showed it. Winston Churchill showed it. We are able to deliver change. Now, I am ready to serve. I'm ready to lead. You know my record of service, not just in the army, but in Westminster, delivering a change in our foreign policy, delivering change across our country. And that's why I want to work with you. I want to work with every community across the United Kingdom to deliver a Conservative victory in May 23 in our councils, and of course, in 24 in the general election, when we will see Conservatives elected across the United Kingdom. We'll do it by levelling up. We'll do it by delivering change. We'll do it by rebuilding trust. We can restore pride in Britain. We can restore pride in our party, and we could restore pride in our government. I look forward to serving you. I look forward to returning to service. I'm proud to be standing as your leader, and I look forward to serving as your Prime Minister.
Thanks, Tom. And next up is Kemi Badenoch. Kemi.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I put myself forward to be our party leader to tell the truth. But this afternoon, I want to tell you who I am and let you see what sort of person I am and why I'm putting myself forward to be the leader and to be the Prime Minister of our country. I'm an engineer and a problem solver. And unlike others, I don't promise things without a plan to deliver them. And my campaign has been from the heart because I care. I care about you, I care about our party, and I care about our country. Our party members work hard every day, and I want to acknowledge the service that you give in good times and bad, and also apologize for all the things that we have done in Westminster that have left so many of you down. I've been a member of this party for nearly 20 years. I've been an association and area officer, assembly member, MP, vice chair of the party, and finally a treasury minister, and also local government minister, and of course equalities. And I know that we are amazing people. From top to bottom, I want to represent you, and I want to fight for you. I voted leave, and my maiden speech as an MP was to celebrate Brexit as a vote of confidence in the United Kingdom, and also in the British people. And I'm standing because I want to renew this party in government and win a historic 5th term. I only decided to enter this race 7 days ago. With a very small volunteer campaign team, I am topping a number of polls and have beaten 6 current or former cabinet ministers. Imagine what we could achieve with you, the activists, and this great party behind me. I have a political message that is cutting through and resonating, and I have the courage, the clarity, and the conviction to deliver my Conservative vision for Britain, to be Prime Minister, to beat Keir Starmer, and most importantly for you, win the next election. Thank you.
And thank you, Kemi. And then penultimately, Penny Mordaunt.
Good afternoon, everyone. We must remember in this contest that whilst we're choosing a new leader, the nation is watching us choose a new Prime Minister. And we should be focused on the issues that matter to them. We should recognise what families and businesses need. They're facing real quality of life issues, the cost of living, being unable to access a healthcare system that they are paying a huge amount of their salaries into, the cost burdens of bureaucracy on business. There is a massive catch-up job to do post-COVID and huge ambitions to fulfill post-Brexit. And we have to be able to deliver. And that means modernising Whitehall so it can, so we can move at the speed that business and science needs us to. It means building a modern economy fit for the modern world, and we need to focus on growth. We need our tax policy and our supply side reforms to deliver that growth and be able to have our nation compete on the international stage. And we also need to focus on innovation, investment, incentives, and a whole raft of other supply side reforms. We also need to be focused on the things that really will help us level up. And we need to be realistic about how we can do that and have our ambitions not limited by what is in the Treasury's coffers. We need to deliver excellence in public services and use both the mandate and the majority that the public have given us. And we need to crowd in the independent sector and drive power down locally. In this context, I've outlined the principles on which I will make decisions about tax, but I have not made tax announcements apart from some very targeted and timely support to help with the cost of living. Those decisions are best taken at a fiscal event this autumn. And finally, my focus will be on ensuring that all of our citizens can live in safety and security, maintaining our defence spending and also standing up those things that will make us the most resilient nation on earth. We need a return to conservative policies, to confidence. We have responsible and capable citizens, and they want their government to be too.
Thank you, Penny. And finally in this round, Rishi Sunak.
Thanks, Paul. Hi, everyone. Let me get straight to the point. The stakes at the next election for our party are the biggest they've been in recent history. In normal circumstances, I don't need to tell all of you, it's a tough job to win a general election, but these are not going to be normal circumstances. Having been in power for 14 years, not only do we need to restore trust, rebuild our economy, and reunite our country, we also need to do something that's never been done before in British political history, and that's win a historic fifth term. The threat of a weak Labour Party propped up by the Lib Dems and the SNP is real, with all the risk to our union and voting system that brings. The only way to save the country is to stop that from happening. And I believe that I am the best placed person to help our party beat Keir Starmer and secure that victory. But I also have a plan to take our country in a new direction, to build a better future. Now, we've talked a lot about taxes and spending in this contest so far, and you know where I stand. We will deliver more tax cuts once we've got our house in order and got a grip of inflation, a lesson Margaret Thatcher knew only too well. But that is only the foundation of a much broader mission. I want the United Kingdom to lead the world in education, innovation, and technology, to make this the epicenter for the change that we're seeing in the global economy. I want families up and down the country to see tangible change in their communities with better infrastructure, safer streets, and more affordable housing. I want businesses to see the benefits of the freedom and flexibilities of Brexit that I voted and campaigned for, living under the laws of our own land. And I want all of us to feel like we have turned a corner, past COVID, past inflation, past delay and disruption, towards growth and hope. We can create a Britain where the possibilities for the next generation are better than the last, where everyone has the opportunity of a second chance, where an entrepreneur can try again, where a factory worker can retrain. We can create a Britain where the most important part about your success is how hard you work. And we can create a Britain where family is one of the easiest joys, not one of the hardest sacrifices. I want to draw on all wings in our party to build a government, to draw on the enormous talents and capabilities we have, because the challenges that we face are enormous. I believe with all my heart that we can do better. So in a few weeks' time, I hope that I can ask for all of your permission to lead our party and country forward, and I hope that you will grant it. Thank you.
Okay, Rishi, thank you very much, and thanks to all of you. We're now going over to our questions from the public. I should say not just Conservative home readers or Conservative voters, but anyone who wanted to put a question. The first one is from David, and it is really this big question about trust. And I'm going to ask it in reverse order to the openings. And the question is, how will you reunite the party and country, win back the trust of the public, and win the next general election? And Rishi Sunak, I'm going to start with you, very conscious of the fact that you resigned from the government recently.
Yes, thanks, Paul. Thanks, David, for the question. You hit on all the right things, which are probably behind me, as you can see, because I think those are the most important things for all of us to do. And I think it starts with honesty. It starts with being honest with the country about the challenges we face and making sure that we don't promise things that we can't deliver. That's how you start, by restoring trust in politics. And we've had a debate on the economy and taxes, and that's very much been my point of view. But I think it goes beyond that, because you also talked about reuniting the country. When we get to that general election, we as Conservatives need to win in lots of different places, whether it's winning in Brexit supporting Teesside or Liberal leading Chesham and Amersham. I believe that I am well placed to appeal in all those places, because crucially, we have to beat Keir Starmer in that election to deliver all the things that we all collectively believe in.
Okay, so Penny Mordaunt, this big question about trust and unity in the party and the country.
Well, we have to pull our party together, and I hope this contest can be the start of that. I want a positive contest. I don't want mudslinging. I want us, all of us candidates and our colleagues, to show the nation that we are building a team together. Without that teamwork, we can't deliver. This is not all about one particular leader. It's about all the talents of the party being able to thrive and pull together in the same direction for the sake of our country. I agree, we have to start delivering for people. It is no point in us saying we actually have to start to do that. And we know that many of our public services are in a desperate state, particularly because of the pandemic. We have a huge catch-up job to do. So we have to recognise that we need to modernise Whitehall to do that. That has got to be the starting point. We cannot continue what we've been doing, because it clearly isn't working. I think the other thing that we also need to do is to recognise that we have to demonstrate we understand that issues are different in different parts of the country. What I've shown in the campaign that I've been running is that I'm attracting support from young people, from women, from Red Wall, from Blue Wall seats, and all parts of the United Kingdom. And I think we also need to create some national missions to unite people around. But that, I think, is the starting point. We've got to make this contest about building a team, and we've got to be talking about the issues that matter to the public.
Kemi, trust and unity, what would you do as Conservative leader?
I think the most important thing to do to win and retain trust is to keep promises. I think that when we put things in our manifesto, we need to stick to them. I think having multiple U-turns as a government is incredibly damaging and means that people don't know whether we say what we mean. And that's why I keep telling everyone that I am the candidate who tells the truth. Making realistic promises and commitments is one way to earn and build trust. But I also think, in terms of demonstrating integrity, it's show, don't tell. No one stands as a dishonest politician, but we have to show that we are honest and straight with people. And we have to go above and beyond the standards that we apply to everybody else. I use the example of when I was vice chairman of candidates, and the first thing I did when I took on that role was I threw my husband off the list, because I didn't think it would look good. I was chair of candidates and he was applying for seats. I recognized that there was a potential conflict of interest there, and even though I wasn't required to, I took additional steps to show that this was something that I took seriously. In terms of uniting the party and the country, for me, the most important thing is for us to stop calling ourselves Leavers and Remainers. That vote was 6 years ago. I think it's time that we moved on and remember that we are all one people, and we're all trying to deliver on the same objective, certainly as Conservatives. I see all of my colleagues, irrespective of how they voted in the referendum, as friends and as partners. I think we need to stop looking at things via the view of North versus South, Red Wall, Blue Wall. young or old, or even England versus Scotland. It's the language of unity and inclusivity that matters. And that's what I will do if I'm elected as party leader.
Thank you, Kemi. Tom, your opening pitch a few moments ago was about trust and unity. So how would you do it?
Well, the key to delivering trust and unity is about delivering a change. As we know, we need a clean start in order to show the country, not just show the party, that we've started again. And that's why I'm standing, because I think having a clean start, being a clean start, is all about demonstrating that we're here to deliver not just for our party, which is so important, but for the whole country. And so for me, trust is about demonstrating that change. It's about demonstrating that we will deliver on our commitments. It's about reaching out to people and enabling and empowering people. It's about helping people to, as the line goes, take back control, because it's about people's lives. It's about your lives. It's not about how we control in Westminster. It's about what we do at home and in families. And on unity, well, look, I have spent years campaigning across the United Kingdom. I've campaigned in council elections in Northern Ireland. I've campaigned in parliamentary elections in Scotland and general elections all around the United Kingdom. And that unity is about how we talk to each other, how we see each other, where we go, how we approach every issue that we champion as Conservatives. And that's why I'm so proud to be working with Jake Berry on Northern powerhouse issues, as they used to be called, levelling up as they were once called, and a new deal for Britain as it will be called, because we can deliver for the whole of the United Kingdom. We can demonstrate the unity that we need through the actions that we take. And I'm absolutely committed as your leader and as Prime Minister to make sure that the Conservative message of unity, of one United Kingdom, whole, integral, safe and secure, will be one that we carry across the country, that generates trust, rebuilds unity, and transforms our country for the better.
Thanks, Tom. Liz Truss. Hello, Liz. I can't hear you.
Mute button issues. What unites all of us as Conservatives is that we want the United Kingdom to be successful. We want to help our constituents deliver on the cost of living crisis, help them make ends meet, help growth and opportunities across the country. And I think having a forward-looking positive economic agenda is a vital part of that, whether you're in Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, England, red wall, blue wall, purple wall. That is the absolutely vital lynch point. And it is critical that when we set out our plans, we deliver what we'll say we would deliver. And in every single job I've done in government, when I've made commitments, I've delivered on those commitments. I said I'd take on the Brexit negotiations. When we haven't been able to get a deal with the EU, I put the Northern Ireland Protocol bill to Parliament because I am determined to deliver what we promised the British public. And that is the approach that I would take as Prime Minister. I won't make false claims. I will be honest with people. I will level about the very difficult situation we find ourselves in. And I will build a team that goes right across the Conservative Party, all parts of our party, to show that we have that vital forward momentum. But you've got to walk the walk as well as talk the talk. And that, I think, is what I've shown I've done in the jobs I've held.
Okay, Liz, thanks very much. So straight into our second question, which, talking of the economy, is about the cost of living, and it comes from Heather, and it's this. As one of the most pressing issues, how will you tackle the cost of living crisis, particularly thinking about energy and fuel bills? And I'm just going to add a coda of my own, which is, what would you do about tax? So I'm going to start right in the middle with Kemi.
Thank you, Heather. Is the cost of living crisis. I am not promising big tax cuts and competing with this. I think it's important that we're realistic about the fiscal situation. But I do recognize that a lot of people are struggling. I see it in my constituency. I think one of the quickest things we could do is look at fuel duty to reduce that. The fuel duty that we have raised as a country in the Treasury is higher than it has been, and so we have headroom to cut some duties there. I also think that there are some things we should look at around universal credit uplift and pension uplift, bringing that forward. So those are two things that I would do to address the cost of living crisis. On tax cuts, I am committed to lower personal and corporate taxes, or I am not setting exactly what rates those would be, because I think that we need to look at the fiscal situation in the round and the consequences of each and every single penny that we either take from people or give back to people.
Okay, so Tom.
Thanks, Paul, and thanks, Heather. The question of fuel price and the question of tax is one that I'm afraid we're all facing. We all feel £2 a litre. We all feel the extremely high gas price that we're all paying now. And there are several answers that we need to look at. There are some immediate ones, and that's why I've spoken about cutting fuel duty and cutting energy costs at home. That's why I've spoken about welfare uplifts, and I've spoken as well about the way in which we manage the boiler situation, which is affecting so many people, as finding engineers is a struggle. And that's why I've also spoken about our dependence on others, because the dependence that we see on Russian energy in Europe is causing price rises here in the United Kingdom. The dependence we're seeing on so many issues abroad is affecting us here at home. And that's why I'm making the case that what we really need to be doing is restoring trust with our neighbours and friends so that we can work together to lower energy costs, and we can improve the opportunities for everyone in the United Kingdom. Now, we can do this, and this is also about making sure we deliver for communities further away from London. Further north you go, the more you're going to pay on energy prices, and the more you're going to feel the cold. So before we get to Christmas, we need a new leader. We need a leader who can restore trust, who can build back our relationship with homes around the country, and can actually deliver the cuts in prices, the cuts in energy costs that we need. Now, we'll then need an energy resilience plan to plan for the future, and a 10-year plan for growth to protect our economy.
Thanks, Tom. And Penny, what would you do as Tory leader and Prime Minister to alleviate pressure on the cost of living?
Well, just starting with the tax element of your question there, Paul, although I have set out the principles on which I would be basing my tax policy, I've not made commitments to particular levels. I think that's this contest is not the right place to do it, but the principles I would be working under would be those that would enable the UK to compete on that environment. I have, though, set out some timely and limited support measures to help with cost of living. For example, halving VAT on fuel at the pump, saving you about £10 every time you fill up, and also some policies around raising thresholds for lower and middle income earners in line with inflation. Those things I think will help, but I think we need to recognise that this autumn is going to be very difficult for people. There will be more that we need to do, and although we can do more on the supply of and our reserves on energy for households and businesses, I think there are going to be some additional things we need to do, as well as looking at some of the structures around how bills are put together, the standing charge and so forth. But I also think there's more we can do to alleviate those pressures on families and businesses without actually having to spend money. For example, if we really pursue some great ideas on tax simplification, the costs of those savings to businesses of being tax compliant are going to be considerable, and probably more than any handouts that the Treasury could come up with. So I think we have to do more with less. We have to make this easier and remove burdens on families and businesses. But I'm not going to set out plans for corporation tax or any of those other taxes until we have a proper fiscal event.
Liz Truss, cost of living and energy prices and tax. What do you think?
Well, Paul, I think we immediately need to start putting money back into people's pockets. We know that families are struggling to make ends meet at the moment. So what I would do is reverse the national insurance rise. I opposed it in cabinet at the time because I thought it was a mistake. I think it's even more of a mistake now when we're facing such strong economic headwinds. I would also have a temporary moratorium on the green energy levy to cut £153 from people's energy bills. And I would also not do the corporation tax hikes, because I think it's vitally important that we're attracting investment into our country. But the big problem we face here is that the public sector needs to be growing slower than the private sector. We need higher private sector growth, and we've had anemic growth for the past 2 decades. So that is going to take really strong regulatory reform, taking the full benefits of being able to do different from the EU in areas like financial services, better environmental regulation, better planning regulation, better regulation about building, so that we can get the economy going, so we can get companies investing in our country, and so we can see people's wages rise with higher paid jobs, because that is ultimately what we are going to have to do to solve our problems in the longer term. So I'd take those immediate steps to help families who are really struggling at the moment, whilst getting on with the long-term supply side reforms that, frankly, we've delayed for too long, so that we can see Britain become a fast-growing, highly innovative economy.
Liz, thanks very much. So finally, Rishi Sunak, Rishi, you're the target of some of this criticism about tax, really. So what have you got to say?
So our number, and Heather asked the most important policy question of this campaign and what the country is looking at. And the most pressing economic challenge we face is inflation. Right? Inflation is the enemy that makes everybody poorer, and it must be the government's priority to get a grip of it. I'm not going to do anything that puts that at risk. So I will deliver tax cuts, but I will do so responsibly after we've got a grip of inflation. And I think that's the right thing to do. And indeed, that's what Margaret Thatcher did in the early 80s. And it's an approach to the economy that's been supported by many people familiar with her thinking. Now, I published a tax plan earlier this year, and it set out my plans for the future. We do need to cut and reform business taxation. We need to do it in a way that actually drives growth and productivity, getting businesses to invest more and to innovate more in R&D. So we'll do that if I'm elected leader. We also need to reward hard work, because that's a core Conservative value, which is why I've put in our plans and paid for a cut to income tax before the end of this Parliament. On energy, Heather knows that this is the biggest problem that everyone is facing. I've announced lots of things already as a government that we collectively have stood behind. We have not done a good enough job of communicating that, so we need to improve that to make sure people understand that the help that they are getting, which is considerable over the autumn and winter, to help with some of those bills. But that's only a short-term fix. What we also need to do is improve the supply of energy we have over the long term. So look at new sources of homegrown energy, whether that's the North Sea with gas or offshore wind. We need to double down on all that. Similarly with home insulation, where we can help save money off people's bills in relatively short order by improving energy efficiency of their homes. Those are the type of long-term ways we can help on the energy side, as well as the short-term fixes. But lastly, the most important thing to say is the best way to help people with the cost of living and put more money in their pockets is to make sure that they're in well-paid jobs. So we need to move people off welfare into work, make sure they've got the skills they need to get better paid jobs. That's the Conservative way to help people, and that's the best long-term way to deal with this problem.
Okay, Rishi, thanks very much. And I'm now on to our second question, which is about defence and security from Lee. And his question is, why do you think that you're best placed to stand up to Putin, and what will you do to support Ukraine? So I'm going to start with Penny Mordaunt.
So I think we should be incredibly proud of what we've done to support Ukraine. And it hasn't just happened overnight. It's happened over many, many years. As MinAF, I bolstered our training operation there, stepping up the volume and the type of things that we were doing to train them to make themselves more resilient and to grow their forces and capability. We've done a huge amount, obviously, to support them in weapons, but we also have been helping on the civil defense side as well. So all of the civil protection, people rescuing individuals after attacks, all of that has been assisted by this nation. And I've had a great part in that because of the two departments that I've particularly been involved in. What I think we do have to do is to be honest with the British people about how hard it is as this goes on, how it is going to exacerbate some of the problems our country and the world is facing. But I am 100% confident that the British people will stand behind our strategy on Ukraine. Putin has to fail. He cannot gain any territory. He cannot be emboldened in his ambitions at all. And there can be no compromise in terms of that fact. My expertise in this area are well known. I have served, I've had a naval career for 12 years. I've served as both MINAF and Secretary of State for Defence. At the Cabinet Office, I rewrote our nation's resilience strategy and stood up our first 1HMG defensive cyber policy, and of course sat round the national security table. So I have the expertise, but I also think I'm able to spot the opportunity in particular situations. The tragedy of Afghanistan was that our country failed to spot the opportunity of maintaining a presence there. And that is something I would do. And finally, we don't look far enough ahead. I would make some changes to how we horizon scan the length of time our strategies cover, because it is not serving us well, and it is not making our country the most resilient nation on earth, which is what it needs to be.
Thanks, Penny. So, Kemi Badenoch.
Thank you, Paul. So the question was, why am I best placed to stand up to Putin? It's because I, more than anyone, understand just how important it is that the UK remains a force for good in the world and is seen as a force for good in the world. The threats to our country are numerous and existential, and we need to show that we are a strong country that can't be pushed around. In every single opportunity that I was given as a minister, when we were threatened by opposition parties, I stood firm, I was incredibly robust, and I did not allow anyone to smear our reputation or push us around. That's the sort of attitude that I would be bringing on the international stage. It is critically important that countries around the world know that we are there to protect those who cannot protect themselves, and that we look after the vulnerable. But we will not be able to do that if we aren't strong. I believe in strong defense. I think it is important that we continue to meet our commitments to NATO. And I think that when you do all of these things in the round, people like Putin, who are a threat to our country and who are looking for weaknesses at every opportunity, will know that we are not a country to be trifled with. On Ukraine, I believe that it is important, because of the vulnerabilities that they have, to continue to support them. I think that a loss in that war would be terrible for us for many years to come. The long-term threat would be significant, and we, along with our allies in the Western world, should do everything we can to protect the people. Thank you.
Kemi, thanks very much. So, Tom Tugendhat, I think you're the only candidate, I apologise if this is wrong, who's actually been sanctioned by China. What would you do to stand up to Putin and support Ukraine?
Well, I've also been sanctioned by Putin, so I wouldn't like to feel the Chinese were on their own on this wicket. Look, I don't know if I've mentioned it before, but I've been in the army for a while, and I served for a number of years on combat operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I've stood and fought for my country and for our country for many years, and I have been fighting for our country in Parliament too. Since I took over the Foreign Affairs Committee, I have been fighting Putin's Russia in Parliament. I've been calling out the dirty money that's running through our system. I've been calling out the problems that we've got in our own system in not stopping the corrupt oligarchs who are spreading their dirty tentacles through our system. I've been calling out the corruption. I've been highlighting the dangers to ourselves and to our nation. This is something I've been doing consistently, and against many threats and against quite a lot of criticism, even from the government. We need to go further. We need to do more. Now, I was in Ukraine earlier this year, and I've met with many Ukrainian officials and military officers in the past 12 months, talking about the challenges they face. Now, I understand the combat they're in because I've been in combat. I understand the challenge they face because I've seen those challenges. Now, I know what we can do. I know what we must do. We must put the Ukrainian people in such a position that they have the upper hand. We must force Putin to realize that he is going to lose. Now, it's not for us to define what victory means for the Ukrainians. It's their land, their lives, and their fighting. It's for President Zelensky, who's an amazingly courageous individual. who has demonstrated leadership above and beyond anything we could expect. It's for him and for his country to define what they're willing to fight for. But it's for us to put them in a position that they can choose to fight. Now, they're already demonstrating enormous courage, but we need to increase the supplies because they're using up in a day what we're supplying in a week. That's not good enough. We need to increase the support to the Ukrainian people. We need to increase our support of NATO. Already, NATO is doing what it can, but it's doing what it can in places that are really difficult. What we need to be doing is making sure that NATO is in a stronger position. That means supporting our allies in Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia. That's where I was last year. I was watching Putin use migrants as weapons against Lithuania. Now that's outrageous, using human trafficking and human slavery effectively to undermine NATO partners. We must stand strong against him. We can stand strong against him. We need to spend, I'm sorry, but we do. We need to spend more on defense. We need to be absolutely clear to our enemies that we are committed to standing up against them. We will not back down. This is absolutely existential to us, and it's about defending our people. It also, I'm afraid, connects to energy. If we are not able to defend ourselves, we will find that prices rise. We find that energy supplies run short and that our enemies use all the weapons, all the tools that they have at their disposal against them. So for me, this is about rebuilding trust with our allies. It's about rebuilding trust at home. It's about investing in the future of our country and investing in the industry that builds strength and in the soldiers that guarantee it.
Thanks, Tom. Rishi Sunak, what's your view on defence spending and how would you manage this transition from the Treasury, in your case, to deal with Putin and Ukraine?
Thanks, Paul, and thanks, Lee, for the question. Now, I passionately believe the United Kingdom is an enormous force for good in the world, and we should all be proud of the leadership role that we've played, not just in this most recent crisis, but over years in the past. But when it comes to defence spending, I take it incredibly seriously. In the midst of the COVID pandemic, when we were dealing with lots of things, I made an exception for the Ministry of the Defence. And in 2020, I sat down and made sure that they were provided with long-term funding certainty, something that no other department had, but we singled out the MOD because it was incredibly important. And what we did was provide them with the biggest uplift in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. You know, that's what I did as Chancellor, to deal with all the problems that people have read about with the equipment black holes and that they were grappling with. All of that was solved with the significant uplift in funding that I approved. And I've continued to support them with more weapons and funding for Ukraine, as Tom alighted on. But in terms of standing up to Putin, you know, what we have to have done is put in place some very serious sanctions that made it difficult for him. Now, I work very closely with Liz, and we'll come to her in a moment, but people would know the way that we have made him pay a price primarily is through economic sanctions. And working with Liz, we've put together one of the most significant and far-reaching sanctions packages that this country's ever done. Indeed, we've led the world in doing that. And that's me and Liz working with our counterparts around the world to do a bunch of things targeting Russian financial assets of the state, of their businesses, of their individuals. And that's what we've done to make a very strong signal of intent and punish them for their actions. Looking forward, all I'd say is defence spending is forecast to rise to 2.5%. I don't take an approach to it which focuses on arbitrary figures. For me, I will invest whatever it is required to keep our country safe. So I take a threat-based approach to it, and I'm always thinking about future threats. Obviously, my background, unlike Tom, is not in defence, but actually as a backbench MP, I wrote a paper highlighting one of the future threats to our security, the threat to undersea cables, which carry all our data and information, which are increasingly an object of attack by our enemies. In particular, I highlighted Russia. You know, that paper has now been quoted by 3 different chief of defence staffs in various lectures. So it gives people some confidence that I am thinking about the future threats that this country faces. And I, as Prime Minister, will almost make sure that we invest sufficiently to protect us against them.
Thank you, Rishi. Well, Liz Truss, you're also embedded in this subject. Why do you think you're the best placed of these 5 people to stand up to Putin and to support Ukraine?
We have led the free world in standing up to Putin and supporting Ukraine in their hour of need. The first and weapons to Ukraine, We've led on sending heavy weapons, and we've also led on sanctions. It was at the G7 in December last year that we agreed with our colleagues that we would put in place coordinated sanctions if Putin invaded Ukraine. We used our intelligence to expose what his plans were. We coordinated international allies to call out Ukraine. To call out Russia. We had Russia kicked out of the Council of Europe. We had them kicked out of the Human Rights Council. And I personally have made sure, working with my colleagues around the world, that there is no compromise. Lots of people were talking about a deal where bits of Ukrainian territory could be given or compromised with Russia. We've been very clear that isn't happening. And that is now the consensus view at both G7 and NATO because of the strong stand the United Kingdom and our allies have taken. Now, we need to do more. We need to send more weapons to Ukraine. We need to send more heavy weapons. We need to encourage our allies to do more. We also need to put more sanctions on Ukraine. I think it's unacceptable that the European continent is still buying gas from Russia, which is funding Putin's war machine. And we've got to learn the lesson for other countries as well. We cannot become strategically dependent on authoritarian regimes. And that applies to China as well as it applies to Russia. We need to make sure that we're working more closely and trading with our allies and friends, building what I describe as a network of liberty. And on the subject of defence spending, I don't think we do spend enough on defence. During the Cold War, we were spending 4 or 5% of our GDP on defence. We took our eye off the ball. We made it easier for aggressors to saber rattle. We saw that before the invasion, Russia were building up their tanks on the Ukrainian border. We can't let that happen again. So my view is we need to be at least at 3% of GDP by the end of this decade. And we need to work with our allies to increase that level right across NATO, because if Putin, heaven forbid, is successful in Ukraine, he will not stop there. We know the Baltic states are under threat. We know that Eastern Europe is under threat. And all the great change that we saw happen in the late 80s and early 90s, those people gaining freedom again for the first time in decades could be lost. And that doesn't just threaten freedom and democracy in Europe, it threatens it in the UK and around the world. So this, for me, is absolutely existential, and we need to put our money where our mouth is.
Okay, Liz, thanks very much. I'm now going to go to our third question, which is on this crucial issue of housing. How would you propose to solve the housing crisis and help more people into home ownership? I mean, I'd add a rider of my own, which is the government seems to have had enormous problems getting anything substantial on housing through the Commons. So I'm going to start with Tom Tugendhat.
Thank you very much. Well, look, you don't need me to tell you that housing is a huge problem in the Southeast, but it's actually a huge problem across the United Kingdom. And this is one of those areas where we really need to look at what a Conservative solution is. Now, we know what a Labour solution would do. A Labour solution would concrete over the whole country and leave us with socialist homes that are owned by the state and we can rent on a temporary basis. That's not what we want. What we want is people around our country who are able to build homes and build families within them, to grow families, to grow hope, and to grow lives. We can do that. But it means investing properly around our whole country. It means a new deal for Britain. It means a clean start, and it means restoring trust, because actually all of this is to do with the confidence that we have in our own communities, the confidence that we have in our own people. Now, I believe in Britain, and I'm sure we all do. But I'm also going to give Britain the hope that it can regrow, because actually a 10-year plan for growth is going to focus on a fairer economy, a stronger economy, and a more resilient economy. And that's going to be built on things like housing. Now, when I have spoken about where we're going to get the money from, I've looked at the Solvency II regulation that's taken too long to break away from Europe on. We need to take the Brexit opportunity that it offers, get the £100 billion out of dead money and put it into live communities. And we can do that. We can turn it into homes, we can turn it into jobs, and we can turn it into opportunity. And that's where I'm going to be focused, because giving people a start in life, giving people the ability to own their own home is fundamentally conservative. Margaret Thatcher did it and transformed lives. We can do it, and we can do it again. And I'm going to do it when I'm leading this country and when I'm leading our party.
Thanks. So, Penny Morton, your view on solving the housing crisis?
So the first thing I would say is the thing that doesn't help get houses built is targets. And I know this from my own local constituency that has obviously had housing targets. And out of the last 5 years, not one house has been built apart from 1 year. And there are some real reasons why that is. We have some general problems across the country with regard to competition between developers, the fact we've got lots of housing planning permissions granted, but the actual developments themselves stifled. But there are lots of other reasons why we are failing to get the volume of houses built that we need every year. But they're different in different places. And as well as tackling those big issues that we all know about with regard to competition, and as well as ensuring that we are being very ambitious in new areas, I think there's some, new towns which we need to build. We need to be focusing on brownfield sites which are difficult to get back into use for either housing or other uses. But there are all sorts of other levers in government that, unless we address, we will not unlock this. So just to give you one example, the Valuation Office. Some of the Valuation Office's rebanding policies are stifling much needed development, and also development that would take the pressure off housing stock. For example, shared living accommodation for young professionals wanting to get on the housing ladder. So I think we have to take a different approach to this. Rishi, I'm sure, will smile because he knows I've been writing to him for about 2 years about these sorts of issues. But the Valuation Office might sit with him, but in fairness to him, the policy doesn't. So unless we've got something that's looking across the whole of government at these issues, we're never going to get where we need to be. And the final point I would make is about planning departments. We have very little capacity in planning departments, and I don't just mean in terms of numbers of people. I mean the actual skill sets, the ambition, the vision, and the support for them. I'm a big fan of neighbourhood planning forums. If you look, they are actually coming up with more ambitious housing schemes than their local authorities and the targets that we are enforcing on them. So I say, let 1,000 flowers bloom, build capacity in housing departments, get a task force in government that relentlessly focuses on increasing the number of houses that are being built, and then get all parts of government pulling in the right direction. That is the only way we are going to actually meet the demand out there and give our population any chance, particularly young people, of getting on the housing ladder.
Okay, Kemi Badenoch.
Thank you, Paul. I have been a minister in the housing department now for a while, and I have seen the acute housing crisis from a different perspective as a constituency MP. The issue we have is around supply. However, we're unable to supply the homes because it is very difficult for communities to accept them because of the way that the homes are delivered. Penny's absolutely right when she talks about housing targets. It scares people when we talk about building 300,000 homes because it sounds like all these homes are coming next door to them. And one of the things that they really want to see is the infrastructure that's going to support the homes. We have not been good at delivering the infrastructure for housing before the homes are built. We need to do that. And it isn't just physical infrastructure like roads and bypasses, it's things like GPs and schools. People want to live in nice communities. They want homes, not just houses, but we keep talking about houses as if they are a commodity rather than something that people need to survive. And I think we can do better than that. I think that there are issues around developer oligopolies. We have lost quite a lot of small to medium-sized builders, which means that many of those large corporations that deliver homes build the sorts of homes that people don't actually want to live in. They're ugly, people get trapped in them. There are lots of issues around leasehold. And these are things that we have been solving within the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Local Government. There is also the issue about the asset bubble. This does relate to the economy. With all of the quantitative easing that's been happening for well over 10 years now, people feel that housing is the only safe place to put their money. We need to change that and free up homes so that they're not just investments for people who already have homes. So tackling buy-to-lets, especially in places on the South Coast where people have second homes, but those local people are not able to purchase homes there. So dealing with affordability is also critical. We do also need better planning. We need to look at migration, look at numbers that particular communities have to accept when we're sorting out planning for homes. Penny's also right about the issue with planning departments. It is very difficult for the planning departments to fight the very, very well paid planning QCs who are able to manipulate. When we were in the department, we had an acronym for Biden, and it stood for Beauty, Infrastructure, Development, Environment, Democracy, Environment, and Neighborhoods. That's what we believe can be done to deliver the homes that this country wants. And that's exactly the sort of agenda that I would have in order to sort out the housing crisis. Thank you.
All right, okay, Kemi, thank you very much. Liz Truss, a lot of talk so far from the other candidates about local control, opposition to targets, infrastructure and all that. I mean, some people say, if they're of a cynical mind, all this simply means nothing is going to be built and there will be no change. So what's your view?
Well, first of all, it's vitally important that we give more people the opportunity of home ownership. And I think it's very, very worrying that people become older and older before they're able to afford their first home. And I think that's a problem for our country and how people feel and whether they feel they've got a stake in our society. But it's also it's an electoral problem for the Conservatives when younger people simply aren't able to afford a home anymore. They're not part of that property owning democracy that has been so critical to us gaining support at elections. And of course, the right to buy was the great example of where we opened up home ownership to many, many more people. I think one of the problems is that we've taken a one-size-fits-all policy approach to housing, and we need different policies in different parts of the country. The situation in Cornwall is very, very different to that in London, very, very different to that in the north of England or Scotland. And in our cities, I think we should be building up more. We should make more of the space we have. In our countryside and rural areas, I'm a supporter of allowing incremental expansion of villages rather than these massive targets that land on the back of local councils. I also think we need to look at housing together with industry, infrastructure as communities rather than just housing estates plonked in the middle of nowhere with no discernible facilities or infrastructure to support them. And I think that's the way we get support of local communities. But what I wanted to say is we're not going to be able to have a successful planning policy if we don't have the support of all of the Conservative Party. I don't want to see another planning war like we've had before. So it's very, very important that we have policies that command local consent, that local people can support, because they know that it's going to help their children, their grandchildren, their friends get on the housing ladder. And that's how we need to develop that policy.
Thank you, Liz. Rishi Sunak.
Thanks, Paul. We're all Conservatives and we believe in home ownership, and we want to make sure that people can fulfill that dream of owning their own home. And sadly, far too many young people can't anymore, and that's something that we have to figure out a way to solve. Kemi's right, though, it's not an easy problem. We should be honest about that, because getting the consent for the number of homes we need is a challenge. There are a few things that we can focus on. Some of them have been touched on. One is brownfield. We do have a decent amount of brownfield land in the UK, so we're now spending more money to figure out how to unlock that and remediate it. The second is urban densification, where in our cities, we're much less dense than lots of other places around Europe, and it's easier there to build more housing, which we need to do more of. One of our fantastic colleagues is a chap called Richard Bacon, and for a long time, he's been talking about modular building, which is, again, something we should do. It's something that we don't do in this country at all, and it sounds a bit odd, flat-packed housing, but lots of countries around the world use more of it, and it lowers the cost of housing dramatically. Someone touched on small and medium-sized builders. They've disappeared from the market. We need to get them back in, and there's some questions about how we do that. And then lastly, land banking, which we've looked at time and time again. and making sure that we have a system where large developers can't hog the land instead of it being released for house building. I guess the last thing I would say as well is, look, we're Conservatives, we believe in ownership. Now, we also have a very big social housing budget that the government supports. So one of the things that Robert Jenrick did very well was start to shift that budget in the direction of ownership. So we didn't just have social tenants who were renting, we used those monies to help them buy that home, and we did it incrementally over time. And instead of forcing developers just to build affordable social housing for rent, we also said to them, you have to build some that people could own. And I think that was a philosophical difference we have with the Labour Party, because we believe in supporting home ownership, not just keeping people in rented social accommodation. Now, look, we get lots of people don't like that, but we need to make sure that we stick up for that, because ownership is something as a value is really important to us as a party.
Thanks very much, Rishi. We're now going to go to a completely different sort of question, as we've had questions of a more personal nature coming in from those who've submitted them. So Peter asked, if this is an interview to become Prime Minister, what is your greatest weakness and how would you overcome this? So Kemi Badenoch.
Thanks, Peter. That's a great question. I think my greatest weakness is probably allowing my sense of humor to look like I'm flippant about issues. And I'm someone who thinks you don't be able to get really, really difficult situations. I do recall certain occasions when I said things were just me being a bit jokey, people were either offended or thought I wasn't taking them seriously. And so that is something which I have worked on, and now I'm very careful about how I use my words, especially in Parliament, at the dispatch box, especially on the media. I think it is really important that politicians present a seriousness to the public, because we're dealing with so many difficult questions, and they need to know that we are on their side and that it's not just something that we're doing for ourselves or as a bit of a lark. So that's a weakness which I know I do have and which I work on every moment. And I hope that I've been able to demonstrate that in this particular hustings, but also throughout the course of my career as a Member of Parliament.
Thanks, Kemi. Rishi Sunak.
Thanks, Paul. I think most people know I probably have a reputation for working hard and getting across the details. I think you've got to make sure that in these jobs, especially the more senior you get, that you don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. And part of what I've had to do over the time, and I'm constantly working at, is getting that balance right between across the detail and understanding every aspect of something, and then realizing I know as much, or I've done as much as I need to on that, and my time is better spent elsewhere. So that's something that you can constantly get better at, but that's something that I'm always working on.
Liz Truss.
Well, I think in the past, Paul, it's fair to say I've sometimes been excessively over-enthusiastic, and sometimes I have to rein myself in and try and do a bit less and make sure that we are 100% focused. And that is what I think we need to do now. We need to focus on getting the economy going and not try and do too much.
And Penny, what would you say your greatest weakness is?
Well, I was tempted to say Burmese cats, as I have 4, and introducing them into number 10 might present some challenges with Larry. But I think everyone has strengths and weaknesses. I think I've learned over the years to be able to delegate to become more effective. But I think all of us are going to need to build a team of all the talents in the party. We all have different backgrounds. We all have different strengths and weaknesses, but the team is what hasn't been at the heart of a government. And it's got to be less about just the person in that top job. It's got to be everyone around the cabinet table and really empowered ministers of state with very clear deliverables and a timetable. And that is the only way we're going to get things going.
All right, Penny, thanks very much. And finally, Tom Tugendhat.
Paul, I know this is going to surprise you, but I may talk about the army a little bit too much, which is possibly a weakness. I mean, it was incredibly formative for my life, and it did teach me a lot about leadership and team building and all the things that I think are necessary. But it would be wrong to think that it's a one size fits all. I know that it's not for everybody, and I do know that that we do have to find many other organisations that help in different ways. And one of the things I definitely celebrate in Number 10 is, of course, not just the uniformed services like the ambulances and our medical provision, but also the businesses and the communities and the families that do so much and are absolutely essential to supporting us. So restoring trust with them and getting a clean start on that emphasis on the army may be something I need to work on.
Okay, Tom, thanks. Look, I'd love to have had time for much more, which we haven't got, but we now must move into our closing statements of about a minute each. I'm going to do them in the same order that we did the opening remarks, which means that Liz Truss will start.
Friends and colleagues, we need to deliver for our country. People are struggling with the cost of living crisis. We need to make sure we revive our towns and cities across the country. We only have 2 years before a general election. I'm a Prime Minister that could hit the ground running with a clear plan about how we deliver to turn the economy round, to get all parts of our country going, and also to make sure that we continue to stand up against Putin in his appalling war in Ukraine and continue to deliver all the promises and opportunities of Brexit. I'm somebody who's shown in every job I've done, I deliver, I do what I say I will do, I keep my promises. I can go in, I can defeat Ed Davey and Keir Starmer at the next election by making sure we are demonstrating we have delivered for the British people.
Liz, thanks very much. And next, Tom Tugendhat.
Thanks, Paul. And thanks for the opportunity to talk to so many Conservative members today. I'm going to lead us in a new direction because I think we can deliver a clean start. I think we can deliver a new party, a new drive that is going to change the way we speak to the British people. In the elections next year for councils across our country, and the year after in the general election, we need to win. We need to defeat Starmer, Sturgeon and Davey. And we can do it. We absolutely can do it, but we can only do it if we get a clean start. Now, I know that this is going to be difficult and we need to deliver. But by delivering for the British people, we will demonstrate again why the Conservative Party is the natural party of government. And we will not hand this great country over to Labour and Labour's failures. We won't allow the separation of our union, and we will defend our country as I have defended it all my life.
Thanks, Tom. And Kemi Badenoch.
Thank you, Paul. I started out my opening statement by saying I would tell you the truth and I would show you who I was. And I hope that Conservative Home readers have seen a little bit more about me that shows that I have the courage, the clarity and the conviction to be the Prime Minister of this country. But the truth is, in 2024, we would have been in government for 14 years. We will need a fresh face. We will need to renew in government. I have ministerial experience. I do not have cabinet experience, but that means that I don't have the baggage of many of the decisions which we've taken over the last few years. I will be able to take the country in a new direction. But we need to be honest with the British people about the challenges that lie ahead. I'm the right person to do that. I think that we need a smarter, smaller, nimbler state. Only a Conservative government can deliver that. And in 2024, I will be able to win back those seats that we lost at the by-elections, but also hold on to all of the wonderful colleagues we have in our parliamentary party and have a bold vision for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Kemi. Penny Mordaunt.
Well, thank you, Paul and Conservative Home for the chance to speak to you today. I'll take the disagreements that we have between your panelists today any day over Labour's policies and the direction that they would take this country in. We as Conservatives, we're levelling up. Labour would level down. Conservatives would deliver a Brexit dividend. Labour will make that impossible. So we need to win at the next general election. And what all the polling shows is that you can only win with me. In every poll in our party and in the country, I top it. I win against Keir Starmer in London. I poll the highest in both Red Wall and Blue Wall seats. I lead with women, with young people, and I also have the best reach in Scotland. So I have some questions for you. Do you want to win the next general election, or do you want to hand everything that we have achieved to the Labour Party? Do you want a new approach to leadership, which is less about the leader and more about all of us? Do you want to restore positive politics back into our party? And do you want to enjoy PMQs and unite this party and take the fight to Labour? I do, which is why I'm standing in this contest.
Thanks, Penny. And finally, Rishi Sunak.
Thanks, Paul, and thanks everyone for joining us today. And thank you also for the incredible support that you give our party up and down the country. The next Prime Minister faces huge challenges. We need to restore trust in our politics, rebuild our economy, and reunite our country. We must seize the opportunities of Brexit, but we also need to do something that's never been done before in British political history, and that's win a historic 5th term. I believe I can deliver on all of these areas. You've all seen me in action over the past 2 years, and you know that I will bring honesty, seriousness, and competence to government. I'm prepared to give everything I have in service to our nation, and that is why I'm standing to be the next leader of the Conservative Party and your Prime Minister. Thank you.
Thank you, Rishi, very much. And in closing, I really want to make 3 lots of thanks. First to the candidates who joined us today, and we wish you all well on your onward journey into next week and this evening's TV hustings, which may or may not be more decorous than these. Next, I naturally want to thank all Conservative Home readers for joining us, and pay my own thanks to my fellow members of Conservative Home staff for organising this event. And finally, thank all of you, whether you're Conservative Home readers or not, for joining us this afternoon. Thank you very much.